The air was thick with anticipation, a quiet hum of excitement that seemed to vibrate through the sleek, glass-walled halls of Google's quantum AI campus in Santa Barbara. It was February 15th, 2025, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, the man who'd spent decades translating the mysteries of the cosmos into stories the world could grasp, stepped through the doors with a familiar spark of curiosity in his eyes. He'd seen countless wonders in his life: galaxies spiraling in the void, black holes bending light itself. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to witness. This wasn't just another demonstration of cutting-edge tech. This was the day the universe, as he knew it, would crack open, revealing a truth so staggering it would bring him to tears. A truth that would make him question not just the science he'd built his life on, but the very nature of reality itself. As he stood there, surrounded by the hum of quantum machines and the soft glow of screens, he had no idea he was about to see something that would unravel the foundations of everything he believed. It all started with a chip called Willow, a name that sounded soft, almost poetic, but carried a weight that could shake the world. For years, scientists had been chasing the dream of quantum computing, machines that didn't just calculate but danced with the strange, elusive rules of the subatomic realm. Neil had always been fascinated by this frontier, where the laws of physics seemed to bend and twist in ways that defied common sense. He'd explained it to millions, his voice warm and animated, painting pictures of particles that could be in two places at once, of realities that flickered like shadows on a cave wall. But even he, with his boundless enthusiasm for the unknown, had always leaned on the sturdy framework of Einstein's theories to make sense of it all. Einstein, the giant who'd redefined gravity, space, and time, had given humanity a map of the cosmos that felt unshakable. His ideas were more than equations. They were a promise that the universe, for all its mystery, could be understood, that there was order beneath the chaos. But on this day, Willow was about to challenge that promise in a way no one could have predicted. As Neil settled into the observation room, surrounded by a small group of physicists whose faces were a mix of skepticism and nervous excitement, the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. The researchers at Google's quantum AI lab were calm but focused, their movements precise as they prepared Willow for its demonstration. They spoke in hushed tones, their words laced with a quiet confidence that made Neil's heart race. He'd been told this chip was special, a leap beyond anything they'd built before, but he didn't yet grasp how special. The room was alive with the soft buzz of anticipation, the kind of energy you feel when you're standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. Neil leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the screens, his mind racing with questions. What could this machine do that hadn't been done before? What secrets was it about to reveal? He'd spent his life chasing answers, but in that moment, he felt like a child again, standing under the stars at the Hayden Planetarium, wondering what lay beyond. The demonstration began quietly, almost unremarkably. Willow hummed to life, its circuits pulsing with possibilities that no ordinary computer could dream of. The researchers guided it through a series of calculations, each one more complex than the last, their fingers dancing across keyboards as they fed the chip questions that would have stumped even the most powerful supercomputers. Neil watched, his breath catching, as the results flickered across the screens. Numbers and patterns unfolded in ways that felt almost alive, as if the chip were weaving a story of its own. But then, something shifted. The patterns began to defy expectation, moving in ways that didn't align with the rules Neil had spent his career explaining. The room grew quieter, the air heavier, as the scientists exchanged glances. Neil's heart pounded. He could feel it. A moment was coming, a moment that would change everything. Willow wasn't just computing. It was doing something impossible, something that tugged at the very fabric of reality. As the demonstration pushed deeper, the chip's behavior grew stranger, more breathtaking. It wasn't just solving problems, it was holding multiple truths at once, juggling realities in a way that made Neil's mind reel. He'd talked about quantum mechanics countless times, explaining how particles could exist in a blur of possibilities until observed. But this was different. Willow seemed to be reaching beyond the boundaries of their world, as if it were tapping into places no one had ever seen. The screens showed patterns that suggested not just one outcome, but many, coexisting in a delicate dance. Neil's chest tightened. He thought of Einstein, of the man who'd insisted the universe played by clear, predictable rules. God does not play dice, Einstein had said, his voice echoing through a century of science. But here, in this sterile room filled with blinking lights and humming machines, it felt like the universe was rolling dice after all, and winning in ways no one could have imagined. By the time the demonstration reached its peak, Neil was on the edge of his seat, his hands gripping the armrests. The scientists were whispering now, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and disbelief. Willow was doing something no one had anticipated. It was maintaining states that should have collapsed, holding on to possibilities that should have vanished. It was as if the chip were peering into other worlds, other versions of reality, and bringing back answers. The hum of Willow filled the room now, a low, otherworldly pulse that seemed to vibrate in Neil's chest. He sat among the physicists, their faces bathed in the soft glow of monitors displaying streams of data that looked like hieroglyphs from some ancient alien script. The young engineer's voice faded into the background as Neil's eyes locked onto the quantum chip, its sleek surface glinting under the lab's sterile lights. Willow wasn't just a machine. It felt like a bridge to something beyond, a key to questions humanity had been asking since we first looked up at the stars. Neil's mind raced back to his childhood, standing under the dome of the Hayden Planetarium, a 9-year-old boy awestruck by the vastness of the cosmos. That wonder had carried him through decades of study, through equations and theories that tried to pin down the universe's rules. But now, in this moment, he felt that same boy's heart pounding, sensing the universe was about to whisper something new, something terrifyingly beautiful. The demonstration began innocently enough. The engineers fed Willow a problem, a complex puzzle that would take the world's fastest supercomputers billions of years to solve. Neil watched as the screens flickered, numbers and graphs dancing in patterns too fast to follow. The room was silent, save for the chip's faint hum and the occasional gasp from a physicist. Then, something shifted. The data on the screens began to behave strangely. It wasn't just solving the problem, it was doing something more, something impossible. Neil leaned forward, his breath catching. The results suggested Willow was processing information in ways that defied the rules he'd built his career on. He thought of Einstein, the man whose ideas had been his North Star. Einstein had said the universe didn't play dice, that there was order beneath the chaos. But what Neil saw now felt like the universe was not only rolling dice, but inventing new games altogether. A murmur rippled through the room. One of the physicists, an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, clutched her notebook, her knuckles white. Neil glanced at her, seeing his own unease mirrored in her face. The engineer at the front paused, her voice trembling slightly as she explained what they were seeing. Willow wasn't just crunching numbers, it was holding multiple realities in its grasp, processing them all at once. Neil's mind struggled to keep up. He'd explained quantum ideas to millions: wave-particle duality, superposition, the strange dance of particles that could be in two places at once. But this was different. This wasn't theory. This was real, tangible, happening right in front of him. Willow was showing them a glimpse of a universe where the impossible wasn't just possible, it was alive. He thought of the nights he'd spent staring at the stars, wondering what held it all together. Einstein's theories had given him a map, a way to navigate the cosmos. Gravity wasn't a force, but a curve in the fabric of space and time. A beautiful idea that had held true through every test. Yet here was Willow, suggesting that fabric wasn't just curved. It was layered, folded, maybe even infinite. Neil's heart ached with a mix of awe and fear. He remembered the debates he'd had with colleagues, late-night talks about parallel worlds and quantum mysteries. He'd always approached those ideas with a smile, a healthy skepticism, grounding himself in what could be proven. But now, the proof was staring him in the face, and it felt like the ground was slipping away. The demonstration pushed further. The engineers asked Willow to tackle a problem that, by all known laws, should have forced it to collapse into a single answer. Instead, the chip held steady, juggling multiple outcomes as if it were pulling answers from places beyond their reality. Neil's mind flashed to the stories he'd told on TV, trying to make quantum mechanics feel accessible. He'd described particles linked across vast distances, entangled in ways that seemed to defy space itself. Einstein had called it spooky, refusing to believe the universe could be so strange. Neil had laughed at that phrase, using it to charm audiences, but now it felt like a warning. The data on the screens showed Willow doing something that shouldn't be possible unless those other realities were real, interacting with their own in ways no one had ever seen. The room felt smaller now, the air thick with unspoken questions. Neil's thoughts drifted to his heroes. Newton, who'd given the world a clockwork universe. Einstein, who'd reshaped it into a tapestry of space and time. Each had pushed humanity closer to truth, but they'd also left gaps, mysteries that refused to be solved. Quantum mechanics had always been the wild card, a realm where probability ruled and certainty dissolved. Neil had spent years explaining it, but he'd never felt it like this. Willow wasn't just a tool, it was a mirror, reflecting a universe far stranger than he'd ever imagined. He wondered what Einstein would say if he were here, watching this chip rewrite the rules he'd fought so hard to define. As the demonstration neared its climax, the engineer's voice grew softer, almost reverent. She spoke of Willow's ability to maintain coherence, to hold on to its strange dance of possibilities without breaking. Neil felt a lump in his throat. He thought of his own journey from that wide-eyed boy at the planetarium to the man who'd stood before millions, explaining the universe with confidence. But now, that confidence wavered. If Willow was right, if what they were seeing was true, then the universe wasn't just vast. It was infinite in ways that made his heart soar and ache at the same time. He glanced at the other physicists, their faces a mix of wonder and disbelief. They were all standing on the edge of something new, something that could change everything. And Neil, for the first time in years, felt small. Not diminished, but humbled, like that boy under the stars, staring into a mystery too big to grasp. The hum of Willow faded, but the silence that followed was louder, heavier, as if the room itself was stunned by what it had just witnessed. Neil deGrasse. Tyson sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the glowing screens, their data now still, like a painting of a storm frozen in time. His hands trembled slightly, and he felt a warmth behind his eyes, a pressure he hadn't known since he was a young man, standing under the stars and wondering if he'd ever understand them. The other physicists whispered among themselves, their voices a mix of excitement and unease. But Neil barely heard them. His mind was elsewhere, caught in a whirlwind of memories and questions, each one pulling him deeper into the moment. Willow had done something impossible, something that didn't just bend the rules of physics, but tore them apart. And Neil felt both shattered and alive in a way he hadn't in years. He thought of Einstein, the man whose ideas had been his lighthouse through decades of exploring the cosmos. Einstein had built a universe of order, where gravity wove space and time into a single elegant dance. Neil had spent his life sharing that vision, making it real for millions, from lecture halls to TV screens. But now, Willow's results suggested something else. A universe not singular, but plural. A tapestry not of one thread, but countless, each weaving its own reality. The chip had shown them data that could only make sense if those other realities were more than theory, if they were as real as the chair Neil sat in, as the tears now brimming in his eyes. He remembered Einstein's words, that the universe didn't play dice. But what if it wasn't chance at all? What if the universe was playing a game so vast, so intricate, that even Einstein's genius couldn't dream it? The young engineer stepped back, her face pale but her eyes bright with awe. She tried to explain what they'd seen, her words stumbling over the weight of it all. Willow had processed information across what seemed like multiple realities, holding them in balance without collapsing into a single truth. Neil's heart pounded as he imagined what this meant. He'd always told his audiences that the universe was strange, that quantum mechanics was a realm where intuition failed. But this wasn't just strange. It was profound. A glimpse into a reality where every choice, every moment might ripple across infinite worlds. He thought of his own life, the paths he'd taken, the ones he hadn't. Could there be another Neil out there, in some other reality, watching a different machine reveal a different truth? The idea was dizzying, humbling, and it made his chest ache with a mix of fear and wonder. He stood, his legs unsteady, and walked toward the machine. The other physicists parted for him, their eyes following, sensing the weight of the moment. Neil reached out, not touching Willow, but hovering his hand over its cool, gleaming surface, as if he could feel the pulse of those other worlds. He thought of the boy he'd been, staring up at the planetarium's artificial sky, dreaming of answers. That boy had believed the universe could be understood, that science could map its secrets. Now, as a man in his 60s, Neil felt that dream both fulfilled and undone. Willow hadn't just solved a problem, it had opened a door to questions he wasn't sure humanity was ready to ask. What did it mean if our reality was just one of many? What did it mean for time, for choice, for the very nature of existence? "I'm devastated," he said later, his voice breaking as he spoke to a colleague outside the lab. The words came from a place deep inside, a place where his love for science met his fear of the unknown. "I've spent my whole career seeing the cosmos through Einstein's eyes. What we saw today, it doesn't just challenge quantum mechanics, it changes what we think reality is." His tears weren't just for the science, though they carried that weight. They were for the boy who'd believed in a singular truth, for the man who'd spent decades teaching it, and for the universe that now seemed to hold more mysteries than he could ever hope to unravel. He laughed softly through the tears, a sound of surrender and joy. "Einstein said the universe doesn't play dice, but it's playing something far bigger, far stranger than any of us could have imagined." As Neil stepped outside, the California sun felt too bright, too ordinary for what he'd just seen. The world went on. Cars hummed along the highway. Birds chirped in the trees. But he felt like he'd crossed a threshold. The physicists behind him were already debating, some calling for more tests, others whispering about the multiverse, that wild idea once confined to equations now pulsing with possibility. Neil didn't join them. He needed air, space, a moment to let the weight of it all settle. He thought of the people he'd spoken to over the years, the millions who'd watched him on TV, read his books, listened to his voice try to make the universe feel knowable. How could he explain this? How could he tell them that reality might be a chorus of countless voices, each singing its own truth? He looked up at the sky, a clear blue stretching over the horizon. Somewhere out there, stars burned, galaxies spun, and maybe, just maybe, other worlds unfolded, each with its own story. Willow had given them a glimpse, a fleeting, fragile hint of something beyond. Neil's tears dried in the warm breeze, but the wonder remained. a spark that felt like it could carry him through another lifetime of questions. What would we find next? What new truths would machines like Willow reveal? He didn't know, but for the first time in years, he felt that old, childlike thrill, the sense that the universe was bigger, wilder, and more beautiful than he'd ever dared to dream. And as he stood there, a smile breaking through, he knew one thing for certain: the journey was just